And now we have Roslyn Franken on the phone.
Yes, we do. Roslyn Franken, as we mentioned before, was going to be on the show today, and her book is called Meant to Be, A True Story of Might, Miracles, and Triumph of the Human Spirit. So, Roslyn, welcome to the Sunday Simcha.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me today.
Oh, it's our pleasure. It's our pleasure. So let's talk about the reason we've got you on today is because you're coming to town. But before we get into that, let's talk about your book a little bit. It's the story of your parents surviving the Holocaust, but it's more than that. It's also about your experiences and how their experiences affected your life. So it's kind of a neat book that it's just not the story of the Holocaust survivors, but it goes beyond that. So before we get into that, why don't you tell us briefly about your parents, where they were from, and what their circumstances were?
Well, it's an interesting combination because both my parents were born and raised Jewish, but my mother was born in the Netherlands and was captured by the Nazis and suffered the concentration camps of Nazi Europe. And she survived over there. And in the meantime, my father was born in the former Dutch East Indies, now known as Indonesia, because at the time it was a Dutch colony. And his parents went over to Indonesia from Amsterdam. And when my dad was 18, he was drafted into the Dutch Navy Air Force and was captured by the Japanese and became a prisoner of war. So in movie terms, I like to say it's kind of like Schindler's List meets Unbroken. These two unbelievable stories, World War II stories happening at the same time. And the stories, growing up, people would ask me, how did your mom survive? How did your dad survive? And how in the world did they meet when they were so far apart? So, I decided this really is a unique story, and I decided to put it to the page.
And you did so very well. I did read the book, and it was quite a read. Your parents' stories are very interesting, and I liked how you used how their lives influenced not only their own lives after the war, but yours also. So the book suggests, by its title, Meant to Be, that you believe their experiences, whether good or bad, were meant to be. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you came to feel that way?
Well, it's the reason that became the title of the book is because my whole life I've heard that in my home growing up. I mean, my parents said that so many times, and as my dad got older into his 90s, how many times a day he would say, you see, Roslyn, this and this happened, it was meant to be. It was beshert, the Yiddish version of meant to be, right? And when they look at their lives and they look at how things happened, how my mother managed to face death in the gas chambers on 3 separate occasions and survive, it's like I say, if that happened once, you could say maybe she was lucky. 2 times, okay, a coincidence? I don't know. But 3 times, to us, that we look at that as a miracle, that it was meant to be, that for some reason my mother was meant to survive. When good things happen, it's very easy to say it's meant to be, but when bad things happen, it's hard to make sense of it. But somehow they also believe that we can't ask why. We can't ask why things happen. We just have to have faith that somehow those things, too, are meant to be. The same with my dad, that he was in the coal mines when the bomb was dropped on Nagasaki. He would tell you, if he was here on this show right now, he would say it was meant to be.
Yeah, there were certainly a lot of instances throughout the book about that very subject, whether something was meant to be or not. But those were actually the 2 stories that stood out most for me, that your mother, not once but 3 times, was sent to the gas chambers. And like the first time, I don't want to give the book away too much, but she survived all 3 times, and that is just incredible. And the fact that your father went from one place to another and ended up in a place where a bomb was dropped, but however, happen to be down in the coal mines. Some pretty crazy stuff there.
Well, I that's part of the reason why I do what I do, because for them to have both survived in the most extraordinary ways that you read about in the book, there has to be a purpose for me being here, because if they didn't survive, of course, I wouldn't be here. And I think as my dad got older, he passed away on June 15th of last year at the age of 94. And in fact, tomorrow is his birthday. He would have been 95. As I got older and as he got older, I thought, I got to get all these stories down, because these are remarkable, remarkable stories that need to be passed down to future generations. People need inspiration now more than ever with everything that's going on in the world. And as you know from having read it, it's not a downer of a book. Yes, I talk about the horrific things they went through, but it's actually quite inspiring how they managed to overcome it. I think you'd agree with that.
Oh, I would certainly agree with that. I mean, any story of the Holocaust is kind of a downer, because of just reading what, there's so many stories out there, and each one of them is unique in their own way, and they're so different for so many different people, but the theme is the same, and it's not a pleasant theme, but overcoming all that horror is definitely uplifting. So you're going to be in town, and can you tell us when and where you will be?
Yes, and also I have these listed on my website at www.meanttobe.today. Under About, I have a little section called Upcoming Events. And a few that I just want to mention is April 20th at the University of Tampa, Sykes Chapel and Center for Faith and Values at 7:30 in the evening. So people in that area. And then April 21st, I'm at the Jewish Community Center of West Pasco in the evening. And April 24th at Temple Beth David in Spring Hill. And that the April 24th one is specifically for Holocaust remembrance. These are all around that time, because April 24th is Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day. But this story is of Holocaust remembrance, but it's of so many other things as well, as you know.
Have you had a chance to visit our Holocaust Museum here in St. Petersburg?
Yes, and actually my book is available in the gift shop at the Holocaust Museum, and I'm looking at doing an event there possibly early next year. And, I've been in the area for a number of years, and it took me actually a couple years just to visit there, because it's so emotional for me. It's obviously anything related to the Holocaust, but it's a wonderful, wonderful museum. Definitely a place to go to.
So tell us how your life, what you think and do within your life, was affected by what your parents went through in the war.
I think the answer to that question really came to the forefront for me when I was diagnosed with cancer at age 29. And I realized that I had my parents to look to for inspiration and understanding of how to approach something like that when your life is turned upside down from something completely out of the blue, and how do you cope with it? How do you deal with it? And I learned from my parents that no matter what happens, you keep going. That fighting spirit, like what got them through the war, not just day in, day out, or month after month, we're talking years, that kept hope alive, that kept faith alive, that kept them going. And I learned from them, and I saw that in every aspect of their lives, because my mother faced cancer as well. She was diagnosed at the age of 56 and given 2 years tops to live, and she lived for 21 years because she pretty much told the surgeon, she said, Hitler didn't get me, my cancer won't get me. And they were completely baffled by her, because she just had this strength of spirit, this willpower, and this determination. And I realized that I inherited that. I took that from them. I was able to draw on their strength. And the same thing with my dad. Into his 90s, if you ever asked him his secret to longevity, he would tell you that part of it is you just never give up. and in his language, Malaysian and Indonesian, he would say pukul turus, which means never give up. And those mantras in my head, we keep going, never give up. I heard that, so many times that when it came to my turn, it was the same thing. And I look at that even with what I'm doing now with the book, and the book is being adapted to a feature film, and all the presentations and trying to get this story out to as many people as possible. It's not easy. What I'm doing is not an easy venture, and that's what I learned from my parents. The easy way is not always the best way. Sometimes you have to make efforts. You have to sacrifice. You have to work towards something to reap the rewards. And every time I give a presentation, every time I tell this story, I just get this passion rekindled in me to ensure that this story is told, because, it's a time in history, obviously, that can never be forgotten, but also inspiring hope and determination and positive values in people. And also my parents loved everybody, regardless of who they prayed to, what their faith was, their nationality, or color of their skin. And so a lot of what I talk about is about that, too. It's about all of us just working together and getting along, having peace. What a concept.
Yeah, what a concept indeed. Well, the book is called Meant to Be, A True Story of Might, Miracles, and Triumph of the Human Spirit by Roslyn Franken. Both your parents' story and your own is just extremely inspirational. And I, for one, now that I've read it, am happy you persevered yourself and were able to get all these stories and all of this down into a book. If it becomes a feature film, I'll definitely go watch it, that's for sure. So tell people one more time where you'll be and what dates, and where they can go once again to find out, if they don't have anything to write down, where they can go to find out where you'll be and where to get your book.
Sure. Well, they can always friend me on Facebook, and they can find me online. The website is meant2be.today, so meant and then TOBE.today. And they can order the book there. It's also available on Amazon. And the upcoming events are April 20th at the University of Tampa, Sykes Chapel and Center for Faith and Values. I've got one coming up on April 24th in Port Richey at the Jewish Community Center of West Pasco, and April 24th at Temple Beth David in Spring Hill. So covering all ends of the city, right? Yes,
indeed. Well, we want to thank you so much for being with us here today on the Sunday Simcha, letting us know a little bit about your story and enough to, I'm thinking, wet the whistle of some people who are going, I need to find out more about that. What a great story. So, well, once again, if you're listening, go see Roslyn. I can almost guarantee that you won't be sorry. So I want to wish you a Chag Sameach, happy Passover, and enjoy the holidays. And I hope to get to see you when you're in town.
Thanks so much, and thanks again for having me.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.